और बुखार है, कान से खून निकल रहा है।
मेरा छोटा बच्चा है भैया जी, बचा दो मेरे बच्चे को।
बट इस दरवाजे के अंदर उन्होंने 1 घंटे वहाँ पे पड़ी रही, तड़पती रही, और वहीं पे इनकी डेथ हो गई। उसके बाद से इनकी बॉडी ऐसी पड़ी हुई है, 4-5 घंटे हो गए, रैप नहीं किया, कुछ नहीं किया।
अब ये देखिए, यहाँ पे भी एक पेशेंट जो है अनअटेंडेड है स्ट्रेचर पे, और कोई सुनवाई नहीं है। भैया अब ये स्ट्रेचर है इनके पास, इनको अंदर लेके जाओगे? आप लेके जाओगे अंदर?
Coronavirus, as we all know, has left the world in shambles and is still going strong. However, this video is not about that. Everyone who's watching this probably already knows what the virus is, and despite there being some things I'd like the people and general public to know, there will be another video for it. This video is basically for the fact of how my country, India, tackled this virus and how miserably it failed to protect itself from it. As of the date of recording this video, which is 17 June, COVID-19 has killed more than 10,000 people, and who knows how many more will die. However, before we discuss that, we need to know what exactly went wrong and just how bad the government and the people itself of India failed to realize the severity of this virus. And instead of taking care of things how they should have been, like other countries and some of the best examples did, they did instead the opposite. After the initial times, not only did they spread the virus more by basically ignoring social distancing and the guidelines, but made a fool out of themselves to everyone that saw us by, of course, doing random acts. And other instances such as just making random TikTok videos, making people believe with misinformation that the virus is contained or it's just not that dangerous, and including other stuff, of course, that I'm sure most of you know about. However, before we do point fingers, blame each other for what's happening, or of course government or any specific religion, we need to focus on what exactly went wrong and how it exactly went wrong. So let's discuss this in a basic timeline without going into too much detail. On January 30th, the first case of coronavirus was confirmed in Kerala's Thrissur district in a student who had returned home from a vacation from Wuhan University in China. The two other cases were on February 2nd and February 3rd, both in Kerala. So these are from students that were actually returned from Wuhan, China, which was the epicenter of this virus. However, things got much more confusing when on 2nd March, the Union Health Ministry reported that two more cases, a 45-year-old man in Delhi who had traveled back from Italy, and a 24-year-old engineer in Hyderabad who had travel history with the United Arab Emirates. In addition, an Italian citizen in Jaipur who was earlier tested negative but then tested positive. So this of course makes the totaling confirmed cases to 6. Then on about 88 people who were in contact with the Hyderabad individual that did test positive, including fellow bus passengers from Bangalore, were tracked down by government and placed under watch and quarantine. Officials of the government of Telangana stated that 36 people who had been in contact with the Hyderabad engineer developed COVID-19 symptoms. Now, of course, in the month of March, the virus was basically spreading like wildfire before anyone knew it. And since we did not have the advanced contact tracing we can do now, it was pretty much impossible to contact trace or find anyone. But it was confirmed even now with the reports that people that did come in contact or had actual outside travel history are the ones that did get COVID. And on about 19th March, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi televised an address about the coronavirus, announcing a 2-day complete public quarantine. Here is where the video really does start. The lockdown announced by Prime Minister Modi, known as the biggest nationwide lockdown through the entire world. Lockdown 1 was one of the most strict lockdowns I had ever seen a country with so much density and population perform. And it really was the best India could do against a pandemic like this. And it did of course work to an extent. Virus clusters were limited and weren't just completely spread out and a mess. And those areas could be focused on by the officials and of course the other people to be avoided and worked on. Ultimately, less worry of a huge landmass that India had. However, this still of course had its flaws, which were no doubt people refusing to accept that something this serious could happen, as it hadn't happened to them before in their lifetime. Some were of course smart, but most simply ignored the warnings, and while the cops and system tried to limit the people from going outside, it was still being done in local neighborhoods. However, this of course also had issues by the official and government side because of the sudden announcement made by the Prime Minister. While being in good conscience, it was a very sudden, so people just weren't able to get their resources that they had or need for the quarantine time to pass, and especially poor people and labor workers that were either not able to find work or go home and had to walk to home, which was thousands of kilometers probably away, and die of either starvation or die because they caught the coronavirus itself. So in the initial starting lockdown 1, India's government really did try to contain the virus, despite a rash and irresponsible decision of announcing a nationwide lockdown on 2 days' notice. However, during this, very few groups of people and uninformative media and failure to actually coverage the severity of the virus only helped spreading it more. And for this virus, few were enough. Lockdown 2. This is where things looked even more promising, as the country and its infrastructure was heavily focused on making makeshift hospitals, extra beds, import of ventilators, and other oxygen services, other things a country would do while fighting a pandemic. But of course, this was then again ruined by several factors such as misinformation among groups, WhatsApps, online, and other information. Silly acts of people, be it by government or themselves. Media's fake reports of having a vaccine or fake cures. And lastly, ourselves. Combined with all these factors, it was sure that the virus would spread, as this lockdown did still allow a bit of movement with travel passes. And while it was needed, it was risky regardless. And with police officials catching the virus, this didn't help. And because of the incubation period, it was basically impossible to identify who would have it and who would catch it. And the reduction and not availability of PPE kits resulted only in more positive COVID doctors and nurses, which of course were the most needed in this crisis. Lockdown 3 was the short extension of the Lockdown 2, so not too huge of an impact to others, but in my opinion this was the best and the most important time India could have actually won against the virus if they kept going on like they did. People had known of the virus a lot more, and there was surprisingly low movement even compared to Lockdown 2 and 1, despite there being more relaxation. But the end days of Lockdown 3 is what became the problem. State governments tried to open up as the last few days of Lockdown 3 were onwards, and due to the economy problem that was ongoing in India and worsened through the virus, and previous problems mentioned like migrants and the virus itself didn't help either to make it easy on what to prioritize during this time. Needless to say, Lockdown 3 also had its share of sheer acts of stupidity by the people, due to God knows what perception of some Indian people to statements and tasks quote-unquote given by the government. Sadly, by the end of Lockdown 3, people had run out of patience, and so had the government, as cases only kept rising because of people going out, due to cops and restrictions slowly being removed in the capacity they used to be. And in the end days, which again meant more people going out and more people catching the virus. It was clear by the directions and steps being taken what was the priority, and it was the economy. Lockdown 4. In Lockdown 4, economy was clearly the pushing point of each government rather than worrying about the virus. And this was due to understandably less revenue. And yes, it was needed. But what the government failed to realize is that opening up the country and your cities when cases were clearly rising due to the even more relaxed lockdown restrictions and people going out would only result in a bad outcome. As despite medical professionals and everyone telling people to not avoid social distancing, that they didn't follow anyway. People who were out on the streets just assumed that the virus was gone, and that's of course happening because of insufficient transparency to the public by the government of how dangerous the virus was. And the only thing that meant was people that during lockdown 1 who didn't care only had reason now not to, and tell others not to. Lastly, media here was the strongest to be blamed, because instead of reporting on the news and awareness and telling people to stay inside, it was more focused on religion-based disputes regarding the virus. Despite showing studies and data that the Tablighi Jamaat incident, while wasn't major actual heavy contributor to the virus, wasn't the only cause of the virus spread. They simply ignored how other people basically didn't care about the virus, and that it needed to be stopped and social distance needed to be followed. But of course, they preferred to cover other topics when asked. Lockdown 5, or as called the Unlock 1 by everyone. As per this time, cases were in quadruple digits and in multiple thousands, and in several states and places. However, due to the extreme sudden relaxation, such as flights even being resumed, opening up of some religious places, spots, and cops and system basically being pulled out from restricting any movement, it was basically a playground for this virus to just go and infect anyone. Everyone let loose as if the virus just never existed. The essential workers and individual only situation was just thrown out of the window. And without any news of the vaccine or actual working cure, government really did let loose here. Here is where I'd like to praise media, because they really did try their best to interview professionals from other countries to ask if it was the right decision what our government was doing, which is of course it wasn't, as per their suggestions and even more people. Of course, seeing the current circumstances was the worst decision could take, as other countries were preparing for the second wave. India, when almost the verge of ending its first, let it free and spread the virus like wildfire, resulting in the situation we are right now. Yes, it's true, we couldn't stay in lockdown forever. That was never a foolproof way of containing this virus that was so contagious. Yes, it's true economy is important. Yes, it's true that some people and officials really did try their best to stop the virus and social distance. But had they done it properly and had everyone done it, we wouldn't be in the situation we are now. All of us screwed up. No one in particular. Much like democracy, the virus was also spread due to cumulative events by the actions shown before in the video. Not just because of government, not just because of people, media, or a religious group, but all of them combined. With over 14 to 15,000 cases each day, with hospitals full, and the sheer amounts people having to pay for private hospitals, it is insane for a poor or middle class. Simply unimaginable to do so. It's basically choosing between a loved one's life or a lifelong debt. With winter coming and the second wave, this will be even harder to tackle due to filled hospitals. However, there's positive things happening, such as recovery rate boosting. Some states actually doing a phenomenal job of increasing testing and taking care of things. Some have even announced lockdown again in a proper manner with daily notice to contain this. Those who were wrong and had done actions of avoiding taking responsibility are now doing so. Point here is everyone had to be blamed, everyone is to be blamed. But now we can do this. We can try to do this. We can do better. Tell the people to wear masks. Go to work maintaining social distancing. Educate those who don't know any better. Donate masks to charities if you can. Take care of your mental health and keep the elderly and children safe. Lastly, be human. Help those in need and try to become a better you. YouTubers, if any watching this, focus on this topic right now more than worrying about a Chinese app versus a platform war that you indirectly lost anyway. It's a shame that out of all the big Indian YouTubers, only few and Bhuvan Bam came forward to help you in this. People you saw in the intro of the video are just a few. There are other many unheard stories and painful sufferings people have gone through that this video could possibly never cover. And all of them say only one thing: we wish we knew. So before there comes a time that you or someone you know has to say those words, be cautious. If you watched the video till this point, all I have to say is thank you. I just did it because this country deserves better. You deserve better. Many have lost their loved ones. Let's try our best now to get through this. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Take care everyone, and stay safe.